You're never going to eliminate 100% of your risk. It's just not a reality, nor should it be a goal. Oftentimes as a business, you're looking at the premium and saying, all right, that's the issue. But it's not getting at the root cause. And we're working with a company 6 months or 9 months, and it's just not improving. There's a real come to Jesus moment in saying, why isn't this happening? And with the cleaver, chops one end and then goes over his arm to chop the other end. And as a risk management person, I'm like, he is this close to losing a hand. What you don't see is the interruption to the business and what that is costing the business behind the scenes.
Hi, and welcome to the Keyconceptspodcast. When you hear the word risk management, you often don't think about insurance, but that's exactly what it is. Insurance is a form of risk management, and it's not just about premiums, because that's what most people get wrong. So today I'm joined by my special guest, Nathan Glass. He is the co-founder of Utopia Risk, where they help businesses increase their profits by cutting out those hidden premiums and costs. So Nathan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For someone hearing about Utopia Risk for the first time, could you explain what do you guys do and a quick overview of your organization?
A lot of the companies that we work with, and we just work with companies, is they're used to dealing with just the insurance portion of their program. And so we try to open up their mindset a little bit to realizing that it actually starts with prevention. And then you move on to the protection part, the insurance part, and some areas that not everybody's familiar with. And then as your company grows, sometimes they can get into what we call the prosper part. There are some really advanced strategies that companies can use that they don't realize. They can use some of the big tools that your Amazons, your Fortune 5,000 companies are utilizing at a much smaller scale to actually really reduce what they call their total cost of risk, just fancy term of saying the big picture.
Nice. And so is this risk in the form of liability insurance or form of other type of risk? Or like, how would you explain what that risk management and insurance looks like?
Yeah, a lot of times it'll tie back to some sort of thing like liability or workers' comp or making sure your property doesn't burn down or have claims. So a lot of times it's tied back to those particular areas that people are familiar with. But it's the stuff on the peripheries that maybe they're not thinking about that is really where we start to make some adjustments.
It sounds like risk identification in a way then.
Yeah, that's really what it is. And as you're running a business and you're focused on the growth and so many other things that you need to focus on as a business owner, which is what you should be focused on, you start to kind of be blind to some of those things that are actually risks that could easily turn into major claims, major issues for your business. And so it's just kind of saying, all right, this is what's going on. Let's actually take a look at it. These are the simple things you can do to fix it to make sure that you don't have a problem down the line.
But what led you down the path of risk management insurance? Like, how did you get into this?
So when you look at the root cause to be able to impact the business on a greater level, that for me was just, that was the big difference, because there are a lot of people that can talk to you about insurance. There are fewer people that are out there looking at the really the baseline of everything and the bigger picture of a business.
Of all of the different sectors, it kind of sounds like you guys lean more towards the blue collar sector.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you guys went that path?
That's also just where we feel there's a greater impact that we can make. There's less resources being dedicated, and we can go in and really help a company from the bottom up and make some real significant impacts for not only the company itself, but for the employees and the organization as a whole.
What does that first call look like? What are you trying to uncover?
We're really starting with what they have going on. Obviously, they want to focus on their premium and driving down their premium. But a lot of the questions we get into is, all right, that's what you have on the insurance portion. What does your claims process look like? What are you doing to track what incidents are happening? Those near misses. We were doing risk management for a restaurant. One of the prep chefs, what he's doing is he's chopping the ends off of these full-size carrots, cleaver in one hand, and he grabs a handful of carrots, and with the cleaver, chops one end, and then goes over his arm to chop the other end. And as a risk management person, I'm like, he is this close to losing a hand.
When it comes to risk management, what are the common misconceptions that people believe that simply aren't true?
I would say the time commitment, and that's probably the biggest thing at the end of the day. Is there's this perception that, okay, if I need to go in and change how we're doing this and start talking about safety, it's going to take away from actually running the business.
When it comes to insurance, most people just think about their premiums though. So like, why is that only the tip of the iceberg?
What you don't see is the iceberg below the water. And those are things like your risk management practices, your soft costs. There's just so much below the water that companies don't realize. There's really two different aspects to what we do. One is analyzing the insurance program, as we refer to it, and then the other one is the risk management. The analyzing of the insurance program, that's the part where we get into these contracts. They're legal contracts, they're large documents, they're very complicated. A lot of times there are double, triple, quadruple negatives throughout these contracts. And so making sure that those contracts fit the business and their situation is kind of that protection piece that when we come to it, that's what we're focused on.
What is risk tolerance?
Yeah, I brought up this real estate investor, so we'll just continue with that story. He had a higher risk tolerance. He was okay taking care of the smaller things out of pocket. For him, $100,000, no big deal. Some people, they're like, I don't want anything out of more than $5,000 or $10,000. And so that's on the deductible. That's what they're okay there.
What is self-insurance? How does that even work?
Just regarding this real estate investor, he has a ton of properties that he decides not to carry insurance on. He doesn't need to. There's no bank telling him that he needs coverage on this property. And if it burned down, it wasn't going to really impact his organization as a whole. If I lose $500,000 here or $1 million there, it's going to be a small portion to our overall company. So therefore, it's okay.
Is there commonalities between different industries of types of insurance that people need to get?
If you have W-2 employees in the state of California, you're required to carry workers' comp. Second of all is general liability. So for a lot of the people that we work with, your contractors, your manufacturing companies, so on and so forth, it's really just protecting a lot of the general business risks that they face. For a restaurant, we had this instance where a client, they accidentally spilled some really hot soup on a baby. That general liability was what took care of the medical bills for that baby.
Who's going to hack me? I'm a nobody.
Yeah.
Like, what money do I have to give anybody anyways?
Yeah. There was a old CPA that I used to use. And all of a sudden I get this DocuSign out of nowhere from them, from their company. It's from their email address. And it's like, why are they sending me a DocuSign? Especially in the cyber liability space, it's a nightmare. Because there's oftentimes terrorist organizations behind it. So if you pay them, technically you're funding terrorism, and that's a major no-no, obviously. But you don't think about it. And a lot of times they'll demand Bitcoin. And so it's like, oh man, I don't have Bitcoin. I got to go buy Bitcoin and then do this in order to free up my organization. And so it's something that so many companies don't think about. And it's not expensive in order to get something in place to take care of it.
So then how would a company evaluate what risk partner to go with?
If you don't have help, assistance, guidance regarding everything that leads up to your insurance premium, that's where it's time to pause and say, okay, what can we do differently? If you see and hear from your insurance agent or broker kind of at renewal time when it's time to get those new quotes every single year, and you don't see or hear from them in the meantime, that's kind of just something to pay attention to.
How do you go about identifying what that action plan is?
Talking to the people in the organization, and it's not always the people at the top of the organization. Sometimes it's the people lower down in the organization. We've done this where we kick the management out of the room. We don't want them in there. And we just want to sit and talk to the people that are in there doing it on a regular basis, especially in the contractors, the people that are in the field doing things on a regular basis, and say, what does the organization need to stop doing? What are they doing that's hurting the organization as a whole?
How do you get to the truth, I guess? That's really the question I'm trying to ask.
You got to ask the hard questions, and you can't be afraid to really dive at what's going on.
Does soft cost end up costing more for organizations over the long run then?
Absolutely. And it's more because they don't realize everything that's going on besides the fact. So let's just come back to this hotel. They didn't have what we would call a return to work program. Let's address that. Let's put in a return to work program that allows the housekeeping staff to focus on turning over more rooms that can increase your capacity and increase the profitability and the revenue of your company. It was a chain reaction that nobody was paying attention to.
Let's say you create that action plan. Do you ever see them not follow it?
It's also difficult to change the culture of an organization, especially if there's somebody that's resistant to it. And until there's that change in culture, oftentimes there's resistance to that change. As long as there's consistency from the top, it'll happen, it'll improve over time.
What is that full insurance lifecycle?
The top 2-3 things that we've identified for your organization that are causing the biggest headaches, let's handle those first. From there, we move into the implementation part of it, helping them put in those new systems, those new processes. So we started with the prevention, we come down to the protection. That's where we start looking at those insurance contracts, the exposures that they have, that total cost of risk conversation. If an organization is of the right size, that we get to is what we call the prosper aspect of it. As an organization really grows, they start getting to $2, $5, $10 million and above. There are some really advanced things that they can do from not only a risk management and insurance point of view, but also from a financial point of view.
What about a small business? Do they need any insurance in general?
I mean, oftentimes, even when you don't have any employees, there are still insurances that you need. And whether or not you're operating as a sole contractor, kind of a handyman, but you're in people's homes and you're doing work on their properties, if something goes wrong, that's coming back on you. And so maybe you're trying to fix some pipes and it has an issue, it breaks, and there's water damage all over the place. Are you prepared to pay for that water damage out of pocket?
OSHA, how do I get compliant with OSHA? How do I prepare for audit? Do you guys help with that type of stuff too?
Whether or not it's OSHA compliance or insurance contract lingo, translation, it's how do I really comprehend and understand it and put it into easy to implement steps at the end of the day. And OSHA is definitely one of those areas that we can help a lot of our companies with.
What kind of feedback do they give you?
We really appreciate the translation, that you can put things in terms we understand and give us really a handle to the briefcase of this complicated world, so we can go from A to Z with the clarity and the confidence that we're doing the right thing.
Is there a science to how frequently you should review your policies?
You want to find out what their process is. And if their process is, give me your information, I'll go out, get you some quotes, see if we can get you a better price, that's not the answer you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that's going to be a partner for that organization, analyze what's going on, put together a plan for you to implement, and help you implement it.
What would you tell that person that's kind of on the fence, that has a business, who's thinking about reaching out but isn't sure?
There's not any risk in reaching out. At least they know what exposures they might have. If they're just completely blind to it, that's something else, because what happens there is they get exposed in the worst possible way. They think they're okay, and they're actually not.
If you could teach one thing about risk to every business owner, what would that be?
First way is to self-insure it and unknowingly self-insure it. Second way is to buy an insurance policy for it. And the cheapest way to do it is prevent it.
What qualities do you think someone needs to have to be a good risk manager?
In my opinion, definitely detail-oriented and systems and processes-oriented. And I think that the last thing related to it is somebody that can distill a complicated concept into something that is easy for people to understand and get implemented.
Is there anything about Utopia Risk or risk management in general that we didn't cover that you wanted to dive into?
One of the things that Utopia Risk that we have is my partner. The thing that he is able to do is have that level of connection with all these Spanish-speaking business owners. And there are so many out there. They do such an amazing job and they just need some guidance. But they like guidance from people that understand their culture, that can speak their language literally. And so having that component to our business, I think has been something that is something we didn't cover yet. That's really helpful.
No, that's very cool. You're able to hit multiple demographics, and Spanish-speaking customers definitely can get it right from their own community if they wanted to partner up with Utopia Risk. Where can people find out more about Utopia Risk, get in contact with you guys, your social media handles, things like that?
You can find us at utopiarisk.com. Also, one of the cool tools that we've developed is I talked about total cost of risk. And so if you want to find out your total cost of risk, we have instantriskreport.com. You can go there, check it out, plug in some information, see the bigger picture. And check us out on YouTube. We like to share some of the real world stories because I think that's the part at the end of the day that has the greatest impact is that there are other businesses out there going through the exact same stuff that you are. And if you can learn from those stories about what's going on, some issues that other people had, I think it's a fun way to handle insurance, which is not a fun topic. I get it. But B, you get to learn from some of those real world stories and get those implemented in your business.
Yeah, I think half the battle is knowing what not to do. So we'll definitely get the social media handles, the links to the websites, all that in the description below. So if anybody's listening on the audio version, open up the description and all that stuff will be there. We have a segment where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest. And the question I have for you is, what is one non-negotiable that you do every day that you can't live without?
I work out every day. Every single day. Sometimes I need a rest day, so it's not anything crazy, but it's something I can't live without, and it's become just part of my routine.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking about risk management, Utopia Risk, and things that businesses probably are just blind to.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Today's conversation reminded us that risk isn't something to be feared. It's something to understand and manage with intention. So thank you for watching this episode of the Keyconceptspodcast. We'll catch you on the next one.